Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. Hey Sister, how you doing?
How you doing?
Hello, recovering. Thanks, Los Angeles Rams. Thank you.
Well, y'all, she still it has faith or is still watching that National Football League. Y'all know that I am not, and but she was cheering for the New Orleans Saints there. They'll forever be in my heart. I'll have to hold them in my heart. We're so excited tonight for our guests. We are not going to belabor anything. We want to tell you, make sure that you like, follow, share, subscribe, tell your friends and family about this show. This is going to be one you're going to want to save and you want to go back and listen to because you will get the tools and the skills you need to succeed, honey. And that is on that
Mary
one.
had a little lamb.
It's on that one.
Whose
Okay.
fleece was white as snow.
Yes. Join the conversation in the comments. This is where you ask questions. As we said, the title is that empathy heals. Well, we're going to be talking about the empathy cure tonight with one Dr. Alana, the trauma psychiatrist extraordinaire. Hey, Dr. Alana.
Hey, girl. Hey.
We're so happy to have her with us tonight. You know, typically with Hey Sister, we start off with with hot topics. We're not going to dwell on hot topics tonight. We do want to say rest in power to two icons, one in the movie business, one in the music business. So Mr. Sir Sidney Poitier, I should say, and Mr. James M. Tume, who transitioned today. We lost this week. And as we were preparing to come on live, we just learned that one Mr. Bob Saget, America's Funniest Home Videos, Full House, American comedian, passed away as well, was found here in Orlando. So rest in power. You know, we were talking about it beforehand. These people gave us beautiful art. And I am one grateful and thankful. For me, To Serve with Love is one of my favorites of Sidney Poitier's movie. Anybody got a favorite Sidney Poitier movie or something that moved you?
In the heat of the night.
Okay.
Boy, Virgil Tibbs. That's my guy.
What about you, sister?
I don't think I have a favorite Sidney Poitier movie or even television show. I think it's more so about the man, just always seem to operate in grace and have a demeanor about himself that, again, as I grow older, I hope that I grow in my ability to have the same sort of disposition, because you have to think that with all he overcame in the time that he grew up in Hollywood, someone wrote recently on my page, he was the first black man to slap a white man on TV. We got to talk about what's most important. No, just always a man of so much grace and integrity. And so I think those are the things that we cherish the most about people. But it's always wonderful when someone lives a full and complete life. And I think Dr. Alana was alluding to that right before we came on. So I just wanted her to share that a little bit too.
Yeah. Well, we have one comment here, Buck and the Preacher. I hadn't seen that movie. Maybe I'll have to check that out. But I know that because see, when he did that slap, he did it with that backhand. It wasn't that front hand. He went bam, like that
came back with it, follow through and everything. Man, love it.
Absolutely. And then James M. Tume, he's left a musical legacy. And if all you know is the song "Juicy Fruit" by M. Tume, this is what I'm gonna say. Do you know how many times that has been sampled?
Right.
So to create one piece of content,
right,
that for the last 40 something years is still being sampled, amazing. Absolutely amazing. But we're going to talk a little bit about managing grief, since we see these large losses of people who seem larger in life than us in television, film, and in entertainment. but we also experience grief every day in our own lives, right? And so, Dr. Alana, I want to talk a little bit about managing grief, because coming off the holidays, there are times where those grieving moments, the waves of grief come back to you because you're remembering people who are lost. So before we came on, you were talking about your spiritual approach now to loss, as well as tell us about what else can we do to help manage through these waves.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Once again, I'm Dr. Lana, trauma psychiatrist, and what I specialize in doing is helping people to understand how psychological trauma not only happens to all of us, but it is predictably programming particular parts of your brain, primitive parts of your brain, to protect you and try to help prevent you from having more traumas. But guess what? Those primitive brain systems have so much impact on the way that you think about yourself and the way that you feel that if you don't understand them, they really can be driving the bus. In other words, you have to actually understand that we as humans all biologically are a three-part creature: animal, human, and spirit. You just can't get around the fact that all of us are built this way. We have a physical body, right? And we have biology and a brain that creates psychology that we then interpret, and then we act on those things. That is basically how we're built as humans. And we are a constant cycle of life and death. On a cellular level, your body is constantly recycling parts of your skin. You're recycling your blood cells, you're recycling your tissues. So there's a life and death process that's happening on a microscopic scale, even to the point down to the cellular scale. But then also we think about ourselves in the bigger realm of being a physical human in this body, this sack of meat. But we're constantly doing things. We create by how we think. Our thoughts then transmit sensations and invisible feelings and surges and urges inside of us, and then we act on those things. So, understanding fundamentally what we are as a creature can help people understand better how to cope with grief, because there's no getting around death. It wows me when people say, oh, well, she was too young to die. Like, I was upset when Betty White died. Betty White almost made it to 100, and it still felt like we needed more time. But there are children's hospitals because children die. People in midlife die. So there is no guarantee that we're all going to, grow old and gracefully get out of here, especially not the way this world is currently designed. But we can try harder to live, as my mentor, Delatoro McNeil, would say, a 3D life, a life that's not just about the quantity of your years, but are you living wide? Are you affecting a lot of people? Are you living deep? Are you really challenging yourself to be great? Are you living with a 3D life? Are you living with height? Are you stretching yourself and bringing more things into life so that when you leave here, whenever a person goes, what did they bring into the world? And so I think we can have a healthier uh, relationship with death when we use it as a celebration of life. And I'll just leave it like that.
That was beautifully said. I see you going, what you
I mean, I'm just saying, we already spoke a word and we just getting started. Go ahead on and shout out, because you ain't even do your little XU stuff. Go ahead and do that before we get deep into here.
Yes, I have to do. I got to do it. Well, of course, y'all know Dr. Alana is an alum of the State University of Louisiana, and I'm so I love having all my Xavier Wrights on, and if it's up to me, I have them on every week.
Come on.
But she dropping some gems. That's why I love having them. My Xavier Rights be dropping them gems. Now, if y'all won't pick them up, that's up to you. But if you pick them up, you might be able to live your best life. I'm just saying. How about that? Oh, and here's her website. So y'all make sure y'all put that in the tab, save it so you can go to it for later reference, because you will need it for later reference. I promise you that much. So let's then talk about, because one of the things you said was we all have trauma. What is trauma?
Trauma is anything that you experience that is painful, internally painful, and that changes the way you think about yourself, other people, and the rest of the world. Now, that is probably not the definition that you may have started off with. That is not how I was taught to think about trauma. And I went to medical school, very good institutions, residency, psychiatry. I learned that definition of trauma. And the way that happened was that I was working at the VA. My entire career was at the VA. And I treated male and female veterans. And I had the privilege of having them in a program where they could come and stay for a month and get a year's worth of comprehensive treatment. So they got the best, most evidence-based PTSD and trauma treatments, from cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. So some of these things people may not be familiar with, but these were all of the best resources. And we would see amazing change. And the more that I could explain to them about how their brain was processing information, the better they were doing at being able to better control their PTSD and their trauma symptoms. But one of the things that really changed my approach was when Michael Brown Jr. was killed in Ferguson, Missouri, because that's my hometown. That was my stomping grounds. And to be quite honest, I was a bit of a sketchy teenager, myself out in those streets. And I probably did some things and said some stuff to some police officers that I probably shouldn't have said in my heyday. But the reality was that I was also married to a police officer and was connected to the law enforcement community, and really was stretched very much in empathy for both sides of that scenario. And it really made me stop and evaluate what I had been taught about trauma, because that was very traumatic to me. And I was listening to the news people, the reporters that would be looking at the exact same scenario, but describing it with different words, and how using subjective language affected the way people thought and felt, and how that connected to these traumatic experiences that we know are painful, but we had not been taught our trauma. Mm-hmm. So I started to recognize, like, trauma is not just going to war and having to get blown up by an IED, but many people think that they have to have extreme situations or physical harm to their body to be having trauma. Trauma is the relationship violation. Trauma is hurricanes and power outages and tornado, extreme weather events, and political violence and gun violence and slavery and all of the things that we are experiencing there. We have so much trauma baked into the fabric of our society. In particular, the traumas were being committed by the people who were designing the way that we look at mental health, by the way. So there's big blind spots. And that's what I found, that when we really start to think about that, we've had trauma in the past, but many traumas that shape the way our mind interprets things. And then our brain is looking out for more and more and more. And then we are reacting to things.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that was deep right there too. I mean, I got, but I love that definition, because I feel it feels more complete.
Yeah.
To me. Yeah, it feels definitely more complete to me. Sister, do you have a question while I copy some of this stuff and put in the comments? If you have a question in the comments, drop them in there as we go. Like we said, join the conversation in the comments. That's where the knowledge and the healing is and the learning is going to definitely take place.
Yeah, I think that I too like the definition of trauma that you've provided to us, and I think that this helps shape people, um, reframe things for people so that, to your point, they don't just categorize it as these huge big things. So I guess my first question is, so when someone can identify in themselves, and we're all, like you said, we all have trauma, but when someone can identify within themselves that they are having a trauma response, what do you recommend is sort of the first thing for them to do?
Pause. Okay. I have a thing I call the pause skill. So the P is pump your brakes. That's let's talk about this thing right here. This mouth, it's body, it's powerful. It does a lot of things. So you have to stop talking, and maybe you need to stop walking. You need to stop swinging. You need to stop whatever you're doing, and you need to put your body in neutral so that you can think, because your default primitive, all this old stuff, this little amygdala right here, these little bitty teeny tiny parts of our brain that are primitive but are programmed to respond to these trauma triggers is going to be talking first. We don't want that. Okay. So P, pump your brakes. A, assess your internal state. What's happening in there, right? Because you probably are feeling some invisible surges and urges that are about to drive what you're going to do next. Okay. Your animal is in charge. The U is understanding your biology. So hopefully by the time we finish this conversation, you will at least understand 7 parts of your brain that you absolutely need. So the U, understanding this biology, what's going on. And then the S is select a skill that's going to help you in this moment. Okay. Because this is the space that you have control over. This is it. You are the only person that can control you. No one else makes you do anything. It's your internal processes, it's your brain. Okay. And then the E is effectively do whatever needs to be done with your short and your long-term goals in mind. Okay. Because if you have not slowed down enough to consider these things, again, the default is primitive. Humans are primitive. I'm going to stop there and let you ask any questions before I go on, because I don't want to turn this into a class. Y'all got to sign up for my Trauma Recovery Academy to get the class.
Because the fact that you're saying the default is primitive, and you're saying
right now.
Yes. So I really love the select a skill, because my father, who was watching, is always one to tell us that the only person you can control in a situation is yourself. And so when you're saying select a skill and you're saying the default is primitive, it makes it automatically, I'm like, so why are we not teaching this in school? Because clearly young people are not being taught to pause, the pause skill, and they certainly aren't selecting a skill. Too many of them obviously are responding in violence.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, I'm not even going to blame the young people. I became an adult psychiatrist because I was telling the grown-ups, like, I can't give your children a pill for the behaviors that you're exhibiting to them. So adults actually who are supposed to have prefrontal cortex that are fully matured by age 25. So all of us 25 and over, yes, I believe the children are the future as well, but I hold people 25 and over more responsible for their behavior. And the children are not getting great examples from the adults. So
That's a quote upon a quote. But we do have a question here. I hope I got that right. I can't give your children a pill for the behaviors you are exhibiting to them. That is a quote. That's a word. And that would fit
That's
in.
a bar, as the children would
and
say.
this is speaking from the experience of a person who is struggling with my own children during this pandemic and virtual schooling and in the face of trauma. And so I want to be clear that this is not a knock at medications, because I believe in the effectiveness of some medications for some things under certain conditions. So I don't want anybody twisting the words or mistaking when I say skills over pills. I'm saying we have to use the skills the most on top of the medication that we may need to get through this pandemic and all these shenanigans going on out here. So,
Yes.
let me say that before anybody comes. She talking about.
I appreciate that, because you're right. I mean, because without the skills, what do the pills have to work with?
Yes, you can't take a pill every time you feel like smacking the ish out of somebody. And if you did, you probably would end up, addicted or in jail and that type of thing. So that's the reason that I developed a program that gives more tools and ways to activate the prefrontal cortex, which is the most evolved part of your brain. We need it like like we all need more hugs, okay? More non-sexual safe hugs. Okay. This prefrontal cortex right here is the most evolved part of the human brain, but we only use about 10 to 15% of its capacity, because at default the rest of our brain is being triggered and is dominating our thought processes and our internal environment, which means that this poor, wonderful, beautiful part of our brain, our CEO, nobody even asked what to do. It's just being done because we are not familiar with those sensations, or we blame them on other people. We blame them on God. We blame them on the devil, but it wasn't the devil that put that ice cream in my Instacart and has me eating it. I don't have to wonder why I can't shake these pounds when I eat this bag of chips. So, dopamine is dopamine, and knowing your brain reward system, knowing your primitive brain, understanding why your body has all of these urges and surges is important, because we can't keep it's too many people asking what's wrong with the world, what's wrong with everybody, why does it seem like everything's crazy? There are answers to that, and the answers are in this primitive brain and in our lack of understanding of our own technology.
Well, that the question I have up on the screen here, and I think you answered some of it in what you just said. So what equips some to deal with trauma better than others? And why does trauma propel some to dig in and try harder, while it influences others to give up and quit?
Because humans are individuals, and people are if anyone is being lumped into any kind of category because of any type of label that we may put on them, whether it's woman, black, male, young, old, whatever, beautiful, ugly, smart, stupid, whatever, all of these labels are false information. And those labels have a tendency to, we think in generalizations. Our entire society does this. If I have a bad experience with something, then, if I had a bad experience at the doctor, now I'm suspicious of all doctors. If I have a bad experience with the government, now I hate the government, which is traumatized thinking that does not account for the logical things that if I did not have a functional government, my school systems, my roads, my infrastructure would be failing and in crisis. So there are good things about taxes, and there are good things about all people, right? But people go through things differently, and they have different environmental stressors that may push them in different directions. So how a person deals with trauma is often going to be part environment and then part like genetics. There's biology that people have to also wrestle, and everybody gets a little bit different deck. You know, we're all dealt from the same deck. We all get from the same 52 cards, but your hand is going to look different depending on who you are in this lifetime. Stick around, you'll have another lifetime and we'll see what you get then. But whatever you got this time, now you have to deal with it and you have to figure out how to play those cards. So that's what I would say about the trauma thing is I think we all can do better, but we have not been taught. I think we should have been taught this information about these brain systems in kindergarten when they're like, okay, elbow and knees and toes and amygdala, creating your emotions and brain reward system, giving you dopamine and getting you addicted to the things that you like to do. You know, if everyone understood those things very early, we would have a better chance of making better decisions with our bodies.
I love that. One of the things you said as we were preparing for the show was emotions are the language of the soul. And so I want you to talk about emotions specifically as it relates to this whole thing about brain development. So you
Yeah.
talked about that there are seven, I think, seven parts of our brain systems, and what, six of them are primitive.
Yeah.
So most of the time we are operating on total primitive level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you nailed it. I love it. I love it when somebody else can teach it as well, because you don't have to be a trauma psychiatrist to understand your brain. So of course our brain is more complicated than seven systems. However, seven systems in particular are affected by psychological trauma. And so I'll go through those real quick for you, and then I will explain why I say emotions are the language of the soul. The first brain system that you need to know is the reticular activating system, or your RAS, RAS. Your RAS, or your reticular activating system, is your filter, which sort of acts as the part of your brain that pushes certain things into your consciousness and filters other things out of your consciousness. So, for example, your RAS would be functioning if you recently we had the I went through the Texas snowpocalypse last year where the lights were out and we had to go through a whole very freezing week. And earlier today, my lights flickered and my brain immediately went to that. And I started to feel anxiety kind of well up in my body, because the last time that we had cold weather, something like that happened. So my reticular activating system is part of the mechanism that can be programmed when you experience things that are traumatic, because now your brain is going to be looking for, is this person, if I've had a bad experience with a white person maybe in the past, then I might see somebody and that may set off that thought process or a reaction in my body. Or if I had a bad situation in a past relationship, and then my new partner is minding their business and their phone goes off, and my brain might take me back to that past incident, even though that person isn't doing anything, but that reticular activating system is filtering things into your conscious awareness. The second brain system is the amygdala, my favorite brain system. The amygdala, again, this little teeny tiny part of your brain, is so powerful. We usually think of it as related to fear and the fight or flight response. However, your amygdala actually is involved in creating all of your emotions. Your red emotions like anger, fear, irritability, disgust, embarrassment, but also your green emotions, things like joy, happiness, calm, peace. And there's no such thing as not feeling emotions. Let me be clear. Every human being on earth feels emotions. That is part of your programming, even if you don't know them, even if you think they're shut off, even if you feel like a robot or a monster or whatever else. You have an amygdala, it is creating emotions. If you are experiencing or are not experiencing your emotions, you may be numb to them, Or you may be calm. You may be experiencing the emotion of peace, but your brain does not go to sleep and it is constantly functioning. Even when you're asleep, that's the reason why you can have emotions and dreams and things that cause you to feel certain things. Any questions so far? Because I know I went through two of them and I want to stop and make sure I take questions.
Girl, I'm just trying to drop them all in here. So basically, what I had heard, and since you can tell me what you had heard, what I had heard, the reticular activating system. So that's like I had this past experience. It lays down a message in my brain, and when something comes around similar to it, I'm already having that experience come back up again. My amygdala, the blueprint lays down all my emotions, and I feel stuff even when I don't think I feel. Even when I'm acting like I don't feel nothing, I'm feeling something. We might
You're,
not have the language for it, but I'm feeling something.
you're feeling something.
All right,
And
sister, what
your amygdala creates your emotions proportional to what you believe is happening in the situation. It
you?
doesn't create them based on any objective or grounded reality. It's just whatever your subjective interpretation is of what's happening, it will create the emotion and the intensity of what it is that you believe. So if you get a message in your email from your boss that says, "Hey, come to my office. I want to talk to you." If you've been fired before, you might feel, you might be in the bathroom having a panic attack. Or if you think that you're going to get a promotion because you just turned in a something that you're really confident about, you might feel amazing. You might be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get in here. I'm going to get this money." Right. So what your body creates is based on your subjective interpretation.
Okay, all
All
right.
right. So nobody else controls your emotions but you. Nobody can make you mad, happy, sad, or anything else. Boom. Sorry. Okay.
Oh, I wanted to make sure. So it's not that there's only 7 systems. Is that the only 7 of the systems have psychological trauma, and 6 of those 7 are primitive.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So there is lots more parts of your brain, but I really try to teach it in a way that simplifies what you need to know for your core mental health approach. Because if everybody has trauma, then this is also really at the core of how people can approach their own emotional and behavioral health. Okay. So number 3, you have a somatosensory cortex. I abbreviate that the SSC, somatosensory cortex. The reason this is an important system is because it is the part of your brain that interprets pain. Your brain, this part of your brain does not distinguish between physical pain or psychological pain. It simply registers the pain and transmits the pain signals and pain reaction through your body. So when we talk about how many invisible wounds happen by people's words and by how people have treated you, or even how you might think and talk to yourself, there is a lot of invisible pain that is happening within your body every single day. There are experiences. I can turn on my news and get traumatized by some horrific circumstance or case that's happening that makes me think about it's unsafe. How makes me think about the people's behavior that reactivates my own trauma, which is why I've set the boundary of retirement. Like, no, I'm not going to listen to everybody's story, but I can tell everyone how their brain is processing things so that they can really keep an eye on these processes. Because we so much ignore the input from the somatosensory cortex, we are actually completely incompetent at interpreting it. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Like when, I think about what our elders went through. When I think about my parents are from Mississippi. My mom's from Mississippi. We a few steps out of slavery. So now when I think back on how many butt whoopings I got when I was a kid, I'm like, okay, but it also makes me understand the logic of why we use pain to try to keep each other safe. We use harsh words in order to just get through the day. But now look at how it's affecting the world. There's so many harsh words and ugly things that are being said on the television, on the news, in the cartoons, the way we talk to each other results in a constant slapping that is actually having real consequences in ourselves. So that's an important system to know. The next system you need to know is your brain reward system. Everybody has an addiction system. Everyone's body gives them dopamine. Dopamine is an easy, uh, short-term chemical that we get when we do things that we like to do. So you get a burst of dopamine from salt, sugar. You get a burst of dopamine from cocaine, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, other people. You can be addicted to other people, money, work. You get a burst of dopamine from your phone. These screens give us dopamine. You can get dopamine from exercise. So most of us actually get exposed to unhealthy addictive behaviors long before we get taught healthy coping habits, which every habit really is an addiction. Like you can get dopamine from meditating, you can get dopamine from exercising, but you can get it from smoking this joint too, so you really have to learn how to really wrestle your animal and understand, like every time you see a commercial and then you're like, all of a sudden you find your car driving through that McDonald's or that pizza place. That's the work of your brain reward system. So we got to get non-judgy of people that have addictions because they need help. All of us need help, frankly. We have a society that's overflowing with addictive behaviors, and we are doing very little to actually address it in a biological and logical way. But let me get off my soapbox. I'm going to give you two more real quick. The next one is mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are really important because they help with programming, and we constantly upload ways of thinking from our environment. We upload the words that our environment uses to interpret things. We upload what our parents and caregivers and aunts and uncles, our teachers, our role models, the people we look to, the celebrities that we look up to, the news reporters that we might elevate, even your political figures you may look up to. We upload the way that they talk and think into our own brains. And then we reflect that in the way that we talk and the way that we respond to things. So, for example, we have a lot of people that have very different thought processes about the neutral object of a mask. But the difference of what your internal system will give you based on what you think of that mask, if it feels like a block to your freedom, you will feel your amygdala will create a negative response. If it feels like a help to your safety for you because of what you've been programmed to think, then your mirror neurons, then it will feel like something that's comforting to you in the midst of a freaking viral pandemic. So understanding what you put into your body really does program, and your kids are going to do what you do, not what you say. That's the hardest part about that one. Makes me sweat a little bit. But last but not least, you have
wait. Okay, hold on. Let me see, because I might have missed one here. Because I thought this. So I had reticular activating system, amygdala, somatosensory cortex, brain reward system, mirror neurons.
And the last one is what I call your biochemical matrix. Biochemical matrix, or that's a Dr. Lana term for all of your hormones and chemicals and things that can flood in your body at different times. Adrenaline, cortisol is a stress hormone that can make your brain fuzzy and foggy. Lots of us people have been experiencing difficulty with sleep, but we all have higher cortisol levels right now. We're all dealing with so many things. It makes sense that many people are on edge. So there are testosterone, estrogen, and a host of other chemicals that can play a role in things like panic attacks or play a role in being on edge. That if you start learning and understanding your biology and being able to recognize what's happening in your physical body at any given time, you are not necessarily going to allow your feelings you're not going to be operating as if your feelings are fact. As one of the problems is that right now, because people don't understand that you can't just take how you feel at baseline value, you have to recognize that your interpretation of the world is like you are a sliver of the all. So you only have what your brain can transmit to you, but everybody else is having the same experience of having this difficulty wrestling all of this biology and all of this painful stuff we have going on. So if you treat your feelings as if your version of reality is the reality and you're just so addicted to being right, it leaves no space for empathy. It doesn't leave a lot of space for connection. And then we end up operating as if the other person is not going to be damaged by our harmful behavior, all while wanting them to stop damaging us, which is just completely illogical. But hey, when you only using 10% of your prefrontal cortex, sometimes less, you might have that happen. So those are those 6 primitive brain systems. That prefrontal cortex, that one highest evolved part of your brain, gets activated with empathy. So that's why I made the love skill. Love. There it is. Now, I understand that people are like, empathy. Well, how's empathy the cure? I'm sorry. That's not how they say it. They don't say it like that. But I know a lot of people really do not understand why I'm such a champion for empathy. But the reason for that is because it's such a powerful tool that every person has access to. It gets trained out of us very early, though. Let me just say that.
Can we, Paul? I had a couple of questions that came in the comments that I do want to put up, and before you dive into the empathy cure, because that
Sure.
is like, that's why we're here today. We're here to get healed, y'all. But there's a couple of questions. So one was, when you constantly think or worry about something to the point of thinking, even when sleeping, which ends up with a tiresome next day. I experienced that at least twice a month. So we're going to get into the cure for that in a minute, Lakeisha. So we're going to hold on to that. Hopefully we get some skills for that. And then this is another question and comment. Physical and emotional trauma can be tied together, especially if the physical trauma is permanent or life altering. When do you make the transition treating the emotional part when the physical component is still present or life limiting?
Well, I think that we have um, a strange habit of trying to think that the body can experience something without the brain and the psyche also experiencing it. So, what I mean by that is that we have this tendency to separate physical harm. Like if a person breaks their arm, they don't automatically get mental health attention. But if you've ever broken your arm, that shit hurts. And it can often be really difficult to come back from that. You have a lot of fears. You deal with a lot of all kinds of stuff, revisiting it, or the walking around with the scratchy, irritating cast or embarrassment. I mean, so many things, right, can come just from your body doing something that does not not operating right. When I developed health problems, it was like it was traumatic. My body, I literally couldn't walk at one point. Like, how did this thing that carried me for so long or so well suddenly feel like a stranger to me? So there are many times where we try to separate physical and emotional trauma where we shouldn't. Because like if you get cancer, that's a physical blow, but it's a psychological blow too. Autoimmune disease, lupus, any of these things, they come with psychological trauma. And so that just having that awareness and understanding of it, I think we can begin to break the stigma. Because what's the stigma about something that everybody has? Whatever, we all got trauma now. And more people have sexual trauma, and more people have than what we've talked about or what we've known. More people have all kinds of trauma than what we've talked about and what we know. So just really, I mean, the question of when do you make the transition to treating the emotional part when the physical component is still present and life limiting? Start at the beginning. When something physical happens, understand that it absolutely does come with emotional challenges and pain because you're a human. And anytime things go sideways, it's tough and it's going to make you, your brain, your amygdala is going to show you the worst possible case scenario and tell you all of the things that keep you up at night. So, to the person who was talking about worrying, um, and revisiting those things often, that's a great example of how our brain works, that it will go back and reference things and throw. That amygdala is so good at throwing the possibility of something bad happening, and your ras is so good at finding the thing that might be the traumatizing event. So then your brain is stuck on it. And that's one reason why healthy activities like journaling can really help you to write that out and get it out of your system, so that if you do wake up with your mind spinning, you can say, hey, no, I wrote that down already. You might even have to read it a few times to remind yourself, and maybe you find a few other details that you jot down, but you start taking it out of your head and putting it. I keep notebooks and planners and things next to my bed so I can literally jot those things out, and it immediately gives my mind enough relief to be able to go back to sleep. I got some other tips on how to manage some of those things, but you got to come get into the Trauma Recovery Academy. But I hope I answered those questions. Any other ones?
No, those were that was really, really good. So then why empathy? And there's a ticker here. I'm gonna drop this in the in the comments as well, y'all. She has a Trauma Recovery Academy. I think we all need to participate in the Trauma Recovery Academy, okay? Because like she said, we all got it. Now what we gonna do about it?
What you gonna do about it? And no, I cannot be your doctor. There is one of me. I'm the only trauma psychiatrist in America, possibly in the world. I'm the only one that I know of. It's a term that I coined because I noticed the astounding lack of biology based trauma understanding in the mental health field and even in the medical field. So that Trauma Recovery Academy .com is where I have my online educational coursework, where anyone can learn about these primitive brain systems and how they affect the way that you think. That's a free course, mini course that breaks it down. And then, of course, you can sign up for my trauma recovery membership at $97 a month and even get monthly group coaching with me. So why empathy? Because it works. That's the first thing.
All right, well, that's it. All right.
Well, damn, okay, well, all right, I'll see y'all later. Okay, why empathy? Because first of all, let me define empathy. Empathy is not just understanding the emotions of a situation or being connected to the emotion of a situation. That is one level of empathy, but if you turn the dial all the way up to what empathy really can be, empathy is using your own imagination to get into the other person's experience of the world and be able to experience the world through their eyes, through their ears, through their mind, through their being, and be able to use that skill to navigate the situation in real time. Okay. Mm-hmm. Empathy is a built-in mechanism that every human being has, because even as babies, we're connected to other people. When babies hear someone cry or yell, the toddlers will often have the same emotions because our biology is set up so that we can be connected. But almost immediately we start training this out of our children, right? They fall. What do we do? Tell them, get up, ain't nothing wrong with you. Dust it off and put some dirt on you. Get up, stop crying, right? We don't like that crying thing. Mm-hmm. And if we are taught that emotions are weak and that the things that you feel you should ignore, or if you're too connected with other people, then of course it's exhausting, right? Because other folks' emotions, and you can have your empathy vampires, your energy vampires, right? So I was taught empathy as a mechanism of connecting to a person and making sure that I'm aware of the emotional content and making it so that the person feels my warmth and feels my caring about them. And that was functional, but I was really challenged by the work of Brene Brown and some of our other scholars to think of empathy as something that could be a step-by-step process. And the more that I worked on that, the more that I began to realize that if you use empathy in real time to think about how that other person's with the biology understand, right? Because you got to understand those brain systems that I talked about and know that they're not just running in you. That other person also has that going on and they don't know nothing about their amygdala, but you do. So now you got to control yourself. Okay. All right. Now, but understanding that none of us are hearing ourselves the way other people hear us.
Mhm.
None of us are actually seeing ourselves. When we look in the mirror, what we see and interpret is very different than what other people outside of us see and interpret, right? Because the brain is distorting and adjusting how we think of ourselves. So, empathy is really about being willing to get outside of my version and understand that even though my brain is constantly making micro judgments and telling me how to think and feel about this, I have to have the awareness that that other person's version of this scenario is going to be, although it's the same, it's very different. Okay. Even the words that I think I'm delivering so well have to be interpreted through those filters and that other aspect of their brain and forming a response. And then their animal is going to give me a response back. So, empathy is really about maintaining the psychological awareness that your emotions are buried under your feelings. Okay. Your feelings are those big, loud, physical, anxiety. Your amygdala doesn't just create your emotions in your brain, it transmits them into your body. So your stomach bubbling, your hands tight, your shoulders bucked up to your ears. That's that amygdala. That's that primitive brain that is at default giving you responses before you even fully have processed what's happening. Okay. So empathy is about that awareness. That's why I call my methodology empathy skills practice, because empathy is a skill that can be fine tuned and honed and practiced until it's working like just like any good tool. It takes sharpening and it takes use, and we have to practice it. So, empathy skills practice, or ESP, is designed to help you remember that you have to control your animal. Nobody can do it for you. And it's out there growling and going in on people left and right if you're not careful. Okay.
Oh, for
Okay.
sure. All right, go ahead. Show us the cards, and then I'm gonna
Okay.
throw it to my sister to ask
Can
the
you
question.
read them out just so
Yes,
we can
I
make sure
will.
we don't miss them?
Yes, this is my empathy circle, and it's just an example of one of the tools that I give people to remember that you love this person, because the folks that's closest to us can be the ones that catch us the most. Okay, not me, right? Not. I'm just kidding. I'm not only the president of the Dr. Lana Trauma Recovery Institute, I'm also my own best client. I have to use the love skill every day to remember that I love these children. I love these people in my life. Okay. All right. The L is listen and look with suspended judgment. Okay. Put your version to the side. We know you think you're right, but you're not. None of us are. There's so much more to every situation than what we can get just listening to somebody for a short amount of time. So listen and look with suspended judgment. The O, observe the emotions inside of yourself and the other person, any parties involved. Just observe the emotion, put a label on it. What are you feeling? V, validate the equal yet different perspectives of the other creators in this situation. I don't care who you are. I know you got your own version of it, but they've got a version too, and they believe theirs just as much as you. And then E, express yourself effectively, creator. Express yourself effectively. It is imperative. It is important. It is, I need another I, imminent that we that we start to control our words, control our thoughts, control our responses, and be more deliberate, because all words matter. Everything you say is flying across space, smacking the shit out of somebody, okay? And even the things that you think can be smacking you. So beginning to really pay attention to your thoughts, not only what am I thinking, but how am I thinking? What part of my brain is emphasizing this negative thing? And is it really what I think it is? Or can I unravel it with skills and allow myself to hear a different perspective and respond more effectively to what's happening? Keeping my short term goals in mind, like I'm just trying to go to the grocery store. I don't want to have a road rage incident. That might mean I have to wrestle my amygdala and wave at the person who, swerving and stuff around me, instead of cuss them out and throw them the finger like I want to. But I live in Texas and we Wild West out here. So the point is that when you use the love skill and when you use these other skills, you're really tapping into a wisdom and into a depth that is spiritual. And that's why I say emotions are the language of the soul, because your emotions are a communication system that can help you navigate the world. If you can clear out the interference from the biological stuff that you may not even be aware of.
Mm-hmm. So I did a little kind of workshop on growth mindset versus fixed mindset, because I'm in the coaching kind of realm, and I used this phrase the other day: thoughts become feelings, feelings become beliefs, belief become attitudes, actions, and behaviors. And I love how love, if we're operating in love every day, as you describe love here, we can control those thoughts, because those thoughts start laying down bricks.
Yes.
That build walls.
Build walls, build anger, build fear, build depression, build isolation, build resentment. And we don't need any more of that as a society. We got plenty of that. So it is imperative that we have something that can counteract the fear that people are living in, because really, I'll give you an advanced concept. There's really only two emotional spectrums: love and fear.
Yeah. All right, sister, you've been real quiet, and thank you for typing some of the notes for me, because I've been like, child, listen, I've been in class, I've been a student today. What question do you have? And we getting a lot of positive feedback. I think if y'all are liking what Dr. Alana is putting down, because I think some of y'all probably got y'all pen and paper out there, y'all writing, just type a little bit in there. But go ahead, sister. And then we have a question came in.
I was telling you all before we started that I had just gotten off of another workshop webinar about emotional intelligence. And so when we talk about emotion, I am sorry, when we talk about empathy, I had asked you before, can it be taught? And of course you've given us love, right? This is how we begin to teach this empathy skill. The E, though, the E is the one that I'm going to have to get your assistance on.
Okay.
Because if express yourself effectively, creator. I think
not like this.
But I think in these situations, everybody thinks that they're expressing themselves effectively, and clearly they're not. Where do you tell people, again, where do they start with learning the skills to even express themselves effectively? Because they do have to listen, look, observe. I love all of those things, validate, what have you. But then as soon as they start talking, it seems like there's a shift.
Effectiveness out the window. I know. I'm so glad you asked, because I have a free worksheet called Dear Man, and we can drop that link in the chat as well. And Dear Man is my favorite tool. It is not a tool that I invented. It was invented by Marsha Linehan, who created dialectical behavioral therapy. And this tool is a gem. Okay. This is my favorite tool. This is like Kobe, Steph Curry. This is pretty much, if you shoot your shot with Dear Man, it's going to go in. It's going to go better than it would if you let your primitive brain say your words for you. Okay. So Dear Man is an acronym because, of course, I love my acronyms. And acronyms are really important because, just like any other tool, you can pick which one helps at any given time and that help you to remember how to activate these parts of your brain. So today, y'all got the pause skill, you got the love skill. Okay. So when you all are doing shitty thinking, which is subjective, harsh, intense, terrorizing to yourself thinking, that primitive thinking, you can use Dear Man. So there's a link in the comments. If you sign up that Dear Man for that Dear Man tool, you will be able to download the Dear Man worksheet for free. Now, Dear Man is, I'll just run through it real quick for you. The D is describe the facts of the situation. Only the facts, ma'am, right? So this is using language that the other person is not going to argue with. So if you're trying to tell your teenage daughter about their outfit, you don't call it ugly or slutty. You may have to use words like, that outfit is showing the underside of your boob. And, so then you're describing something versus calling it a name or something that the other person is going to react to. Okay. E, express yourself. Express yourself in I statements. So I believe, or I feel, or I am anxious for you because, while I know how intelligent you are, someone may see that and have the wrong idea about who you are as a person. And then A, assert what you want or the boundary that you're setting. So the assert is your opportunity to not make the person a mind reader. We're going to tell them exactly, with careful and effective words, what you would like for them to do or the boundary that you're setting so that they can respond effectively as well. So that may be, I'd love for you to change clothes and put on something that maybe shows your midriff, but not your cleavage, right? And then E, R, the last component of the skill, is reinforcing why the other person will want to do what you are asking them to do. So it may be, a lot of times as a parent, you might be like, well, you don't want to be thought of as easy or something like that, right? But that may not be what moves that person. The reinforce for them might be, and you know what? I also noticed that it's 32 degrees outside, so you're gonna be cold. So that's another reason, right? That may move them more than you, because you know them well enough to be able to recognize what reinforced statement will help move them in the direction you need or something like that, right? So the Dear Man skill, and then man is about being mindful, staying on target, appearing confident, really not saying it just in a positive way, not in an ugly way, and then negotiating. It may be a negotiation process, but you can come to a conclusion that both people can be happy with. So that's Dear Man. I hope you download it.
Yes, download Dear Man. We have a question here. How do you balance this when dealing with people that are truly irrational, illogical, or toxic, racist, sexist, narcissists?
All the ists.
All of yes.
All the ists. You balance it by remembering that you can only control yourself, and you only are responsible for self-control as well they are. So if a person is toxic and you have the option to set boundaries with them, then you work on setting boundaries, and you work on expressing yourself through Dear Man statements and other behaviors that are thoughtfully correcting and making a situation livable if possible. Or that may be setting boundaries that mean that I'm no longer going to be talking to this person because they're that unhealthy in my life, and freeing yourself from some maybe traumatic bullshit beliefs that have told you that you got to deal with this toxic person because they're your family or your blood or whatever else. Like that, there's a lot of things that can go into that. So from that standpoint, I would say I'm always going to encourage self-focus, because the way humans are built, we're all built looking outward. So we're very good at seeing what them other folks is doing, how narcissistic they are, how toxic they are. We can tell everybody how to fix all their stuff if they would just listen to us and do exactly what we said. Here, we'll write it down for them, or text them repeatedly. We're all very good at picking other people apart and seeing where they could be better, or seeing where their little flaws, like if they just did this, then they would be better. Like, okay, that's probably true, but there's also a skill that you have that makes you think that that thing is easy for them to do. But using empathy, you might realize that's not their path. Whatever they went through in life shaped them differently than you. Their programming is differently, and you got your ish too. Okay. All right. So work on that, right? Focusing on that. And what you find is that you become healthy and happier. You become internally more peaceful. You become able to set boundaries to where they can't damage you, because you know yourself so well that you can't beat me with what I know about myself, right? Like I know I talk too much. So I'm working on it. But what are you working on? Let's all work on our stuff. I'll work on my stuff. You work on your stuff. And if you can manage to keep your mind on yourself, like, if it's a video game, you don't control the other bots on the board. You control you. So really working on self-control, self-awareness, and pulling all those pieces together, you find that you can put yourself, you might end up being the boss one day. Don't be the toxic boss when you get there. Use your powers to help move things into the space that you want to create.
Woo. Child. Okay, I gotta drop some of this stuff because I just feel like the mic is, I don't know about you, sister, but I feel like the mic has been dropped several times. What about you, sister? I don't know.
It has, but make sure you put an R in trauma there. But
oh well, let me edit
edit that because I don't want nobody to miss anything.
Yes, because Trauma Cure, creators using radical empathy. Tell us what this is about. We're going to show all of the websites. So y'all make sure y'all get up on all of these websites. Sign up for the Trauma Recovery Academy. It's a free course. You can't get better than free. Okay. It's a free course. You have the Try, which is your membership base.
The Try is actually my nonprofit organization.
Tell us about that too.
Yes, ma'am. So the actual Trauma Recovery Academy, which is my membership-based platform, is built on my nonprofit's platform, because I want to provide low cost and very easily available mental health education and trauma tools for people in an affordable way. So the Trauma Recovery Academy does benefit the nonprofit organization, but the Try, DA-TRI, is the nonprofit.
Okay.
Yes. So the Trauma Cure, Creators Using Radical Empathy, is my live event. My next live event is going to be February 26th. So mark your calendar. We're putting all the pieces together now. And make sure that you're following me on social media, especially my Facebook page, Dr. Alana, Trauma Psychiatrist, because I'll be putting more information out about the next Trauma Cure event. So again, mark your calendars, February 26th. It's going to be an all-day affair, but this is going to be the opportunity to hear more about my platform, to get more introduction into all the pieces of the puzzle, and to learn more about how you can learn empathy skills practice and even be able to incorporate it into your practice, into your organization. You can become an ambassador in your company, and even use this to make other money for yourself down the road. So I'm excited to introduce people to my methodology, but we're going to have to use radical empathy. We got a lot of trauma out there, and there's more, we really need more people who are educated about this biological approach and who know how to use empathy effectively.
Well, for me as a coach, it's definitely will help me as I'm coaching clients, because many of my clients are leaders. right? They're leaders of people. And so for them to be more effective leaders, really, I tell people first first you got to give some empathy to yourselves, because some of us way too hard on ourselves
Okay.
from some of the things that were laid down for us, right? In terms of what we're not supposed to do, or we can't do, or how we can't express emotions, Black women strong, this, that, other, or we supposed to be able to do anything. And so we're just even trying to heal, use the skills for
For
ourselves
ourselves.
before we can do them with somebody else. Rosalind said you slayed with this info. So she's like,
come on, sis. Come on.
yes, slayed with the info. So with your trauma cure event, is it going to be in Houston?
It's going to be virtual. So it's going to be a virtual live event. Listen, I got to be able to do this in my house shoes. Okay. All right. Get my raggedy house shoes. Okay. We are going to be coming together from wherever we are in the world. It doesn't even make sense to try to do it live right now with the numbers for Omicron going through the roof. So, we want to make sure that we can get this to as many people as possible. So this will be a virtual event. So we'll be doing it over my virtual platform. So definitely stay tuned. I'm excited to announce it. We just got it going. So you're going to see the event notifications and all that stuff coming out. I'll definitely give it to you guys to distribute to your audience.
Yes, fantastic. And at Dr. Alana on all social media platforms, you can find her there. It's really easy. You dropped so many gems tonight. So what I really, as we said at the top of the show, y'all, like, follow, share this. If you have someone in your life, starting with yourself, because you might have to look at it again so you can write some notes for yourself. But if you have someone in your life who may be struggling, tell them take a listen. Because one of the things that is so very powerful in Dr. Alana's approach, and sister, I don't know if you would agree, but just talking about the biology behind our brain, it just like we know we learned head, shoulders, knees, and toes, but we didn't learn RAS, amygdala, prefrontal cortex.
I'm making that up. I'm gonna do it.
Let's make a song about it, because just that illuminates so much, and especially the dopamine response, which all of the social media platforms has figured out. So why haven't we figured out how to use it in a positive way? So much power.
We don't have enough time to go into that, boy. Don't put me on my soapbox.
Right.
Yeah. So we're gonna get ready to close for this evening. Dr. Lana will come to you for a closing comment, and then sister, I'll go to you for a closing comment.
Okay.
All right. Trauma hurts. Empathy heals. Get you some.
I love it. Sister, what about you?
Well, first I wanted to acknowledge one of our super fans who sent me a message, or sent us a message, Cam. He asked about had we watched Women of the Movement, and of course, talk about trauma. Just the reminders of what all we've been through, and how we are often put in positions to be strong and have to make decisions that impact everyone or the world. So I did want to acknowledge that Cam brought that up, because I do think obviously it was right for this conversation, as we're talking about how we heal from trauma. Dr. Alana, like my sister said, excuse me, I gotta do like the other lady said, this is not a COVID call. I just want something just went down the wrong way. But I have to say, you have been awesome, because we needed to hear all of this tonight. We really did. Hold on.
And I want to actually respond to something that you said earlier, because you asked me about Black women and how women have had to carry so much of an emotional burden, and what does that mean for I think women have a skill set that unfortunately men haven't had the opportunity to get, which is we can't physically overpower you most of the time. We have to learn how to funnel emotions into productivity. And I think that truly one of the most unique positions that women of African descent have been in is that we have had to love people and had to understand, like, I can hate you and love you at the same time. I can hate you and fear you at the same time. I can hate you and help you at the same time because I have access to a deeper love, a deeper spirituality, a deeper connection to the divinity that we all truly have access to. So I do believe that women have been and are being and will be, particularly women of color, are going to be instrumental into balancing out some of this hyper masculinity of the world. We need balance. Men need to understand their emotional and softer sides so that they can have healthy conversations and not break out into wars and fights and gun violence. And, you know, women need to be able to be tougher and be all things that we want to be as well. So we can have the balance, and it really comes from internal centering on your internal self. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say just thank you so much because all of this information has been extremely helpful. Your acronyms, I love them. They're things that we can easily refer back to. And you know, we say often, I mean, we've had some really great guests on Hey Sister. This was one I knew that was going to be amazing, and I had put it out there. You know, I have 1,000 friends on Facebook, and the fact that, you know, I really want so many more people to take advantage of hearing these fabulous guests and people like you, Dr. Lana, because again, we didn't get to the we didn't get to this conversation. But you know, since my sister told me about that, I was like, oh my gosh, she sounds amazing just from what you're telling me. So I this has been a privilege and an honor for me. So thank you so much. You see, you got me coughing. I'm over here just overheated and coughing and everything.
Just,
So
just taking it all in, just taking
yes,
it in, just shaking you up on the inside.
absolutely. So thank you so much.
Well, Cher asks, how do I replay this live? How do I replay this? Go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's easily found there because they're all archived by date. Subscribe there. Mark the little bell so you never miss a live episode. You know when we go live. Dr. Lana, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for just your way of teaching this makes it so attainable to all of us. And I thank you for that. I believe that's a skill and capacity learned at the Xavier University of Louisiana. So I got to shout out XU one more time.
Come on. It was. Come on, XU. All right.
But in the spirit of shouting out our HBCUs, I am going to shout out, you know, JSU just picked up another one. Top high school recruit signed yesterday, and you know, Southern University is about to select a new president of its system. So hey, it's a
Come
good
on,
time to be an HBCU grad.
Hey,
That's all
I'm so
saying.
excited. I'm so excited. Listen, we gonna turn all their band shows are gonna change. I'm sorry.
And you know this. But with that being said, thank you all for tuning in to Hey Sister tonight. Make sure you share this. Sit down with it. Sit down with your kids. Sit down with your kids. I have teenagers.
I'm about to say, not the little ones, because I've been cussing.
No, maybe not the little ones, but I did like that shitty acronym. I didn't get that one, but I'm gonna come back to that at the end. But sit down with your kids and share, just share about, hey, all of this stuff that you feel and experiencing, all of this happening in your brain that you don't have language for, it's connected to something. It's normal. Now, this is how we can do something about it. Let's practice some love. Let's do some of these other things. So much. Yes, yes, yes. Whew. With that said, you all hold the line and wave goodbye to everybody, and we'll see you next week on Hey Sister. Good night, everybody.